Oh, it's not sci-fi, but I don't think anyone will mind if I tackle one of my favorite subjects. It's a good thing we got all those reference photos when we went to see Sentimental Journey. And click around here. That's an awful lot of rivets. I better see how accurate this kit is. Well, that's not accurate at all. I wonder what Tim thinks. An intense focus on accuracy is a form of gatekeeping and is a major turnoff for people, and it can cause people to leave the hobby altogether.
What the hell does accuracy mean when it comes to science fiction?
Well, that, my friend, is a loaded question, and it depends on who you ask. And I'm going to be a bit bold in how I say this. And there are modelers who wrap too much of their ego and identity into what they do. Accuracy becomes this big thing, their whole thing, and to the point that they will not accept anything that isn't how they perceive it on screen. And it's very important to say how they perceive it. Because as we're going to talk about in this discussion, accuracy is a studio model. Did you see a picture? Was it white balanced properly? Did you see it on TV? Was it broadcast? Was it VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, digital? Is your TV tuned right? How good are your eyes? How good do you see color? Ultimately, as this whole thing is about, we're going to talk about how accuracy is relative.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, is that, and this is nothing unique to the science fiction modeling community, obviously. Every subgenre of modeling has got its own quest for accuracy, and really, the whole point of scale modeling is to be as accurate as possible. But you're right, not a lot, but there is a subset of modelers that do take the quest for accuracy, in my opinion, a bit too far. Mm-hmm. And certainly in the armor realm, we have what they call rivet counters, right? I like to call them dilithium counters in the realm of science fiction modeling.
Oh, I'm going to write that down.
Hashtag dilithium counter. But yeah, you're absolutely right in terms of what are you modeling when we're talking about an accurate model? Mm-hmm. Are you making it accurate to the filming miniature? Mm-hmm. Never mind the fact that any particular hero ship may have 4 or 5 different miniatures of it that were used in the creation of whatever show it was. It could be a physical model, it could be a CG model, which may be rendered differently for different scenes as it's required. Concept art, technical manuals, there's all kinds of things that go into the mix because there's no one definitive source subject.
Oh, exactly. I do want to add a caveat to what I said earlier. I don't have a problem with people who strive for accuracy who don't criticize others for being inaccurate. That's not a problem. If you're getting joy from it, great. But if you're using it as a way to make yourself feel like the more superior modeler, builder than others, that's a problem.
Yeah, because the whole point of the hobby is to gain enjoyment. Mm-hmm. Personal enjoyment of selecting, picking out the model, taking it home, opening it up, building it, the joy of building it, the joy of trying to make it the model you want it to be, and then for someone to come along afterwards and say, well, that's not the exact right shade of cadmium red on the Venator class Star Destroyer, or those figures you used, you shouldn't have used the kit figures, they're out of scale, right? Come on. This is not what the hobby is about. I want to say, though, I do believe this is a very small subset of the modeling demographics, and I think it's not, again, like I said, it's not restricted only to science fiction modelers. Please don't unsubscribe from either of our channels. But let's get into this. Yeah. Because a lot, I think, to talk about when it comes to accuracy, a lot of different nuance.
If you're going to do something accurately, you have to choose either your exact photo, screen grab, whatever your source is, that has to be what you base everything off of. Because you and I have talked about the Enterprise D before at length. It's a bit of a passion of mine. I do enjoy the subject. But when they released on Blu-ray, it made a lot of things apparent. And the biggest is just in the pilot episode, from shot to shot to shot, the color grading is different. In some shots, the model was painted a blue and a green, and then it kind of all muddled together. Then they added a bunch of pencil lines to add some separation. The degree to which you see green varies considerably in the episode. To say nothing of when they do the saucer separation, the neck is a completely different model, and it was painted differently and colored differently. This is just one example of one ship in one episode. Well, what's accurate? If you use the opening credits, the green is very apparent in it, but it appears gray-green, not blue-green. So you have to make the choice, and you might have to deal with people who push back and say, this is exactly what I base it on. But, once again, at the risk of going on, it's relative. Because how well you see color, how tuned your TV is, those things matter to determine whether you're accurate or not. And it's a bad space to be in when you focus so much on something that is so subjective.
Yeah, it's true. It is subjective. And that's the thing. It's like, ultimately, like when I'm building a model, I mean, I do try and make it as accurate as possible, but not to the extent where it's getting in the way of enjoying building the model. I mean, I know people have talked about with accuracy, and we already talked about this here. Are we trying to make it accurate to what was on screen, or are we trying to make it accurate to the intent of the production design, or are we trying to make it accurate to our own headcanon? And for me, I kind of lean towards more the headcanon / producer's intent than to what was on screen, because I do understand that things are filmed differently. There's multiple models involved, built by multiple model makers. In some cases, designs are refined during production, which is why you might have a slightly different looking model in one scene of a film or TV show that looks different later on down the road. So I just try, and it's almost like impressionist paintings. I try to create something that, if you look at it, it gives you the impression, yes, that's a good impression of what the ship looks like. Because quite frankly, you cannot make a perfectly accurate model. It's impossible because there's no one source to get it from.
Well, that's just it. I mean, once again, I may beat the Enterprise D to death in this conversation, but you could mimic the studio model because there were so many good photographs taken at the Christie auction. But you have to go color correct those photos because the white balance was off. So it's got this off into the orange-brown hue compared to what it actually was. So you could make the Enterprise D accurate to the Generations filming model. But that's, once again, you have to make the choice. Are you making the studio model, or are you making it how it appeared on screen? In which case, is it the physical model or the CGI model? And I think we're gonna get into the circular conversation a lot because there's so much. Yeah.
It can very, very easily become a chicken versus the egg argument. But when we're talking about accuracy, okay, I think we're both in agreement that it's impossibly perfectly accurate to any one subject.
Yeah.
But you still, like I do, I want to have some semblance of accuracy.
Yeah.
Where I can say at least, okay, the NX class ships were like a bare metal finish. They weren't copper. Yeah. They weren't gray, right?
Yeah.
So how am I going to replicate that bare metal finish? Do I need to make a very high chrome glossy looking? Should it be a very distressed aluminum looking, like a 1950s interceptor jet? Really, that's where it comes in. But where do you get that from? Like, what are your sources for accuracy? When you're building a Star Trek model, a Star Wars model, you're going to look at some sort of photographic reference to it. Where are you getting your information from?
So the best example I currently have is, actually, it's pardon me, it's 2 examples. I've just done 2 things back to back. I did the 1,000 scale Klingon battlecruiser as the IKS Groth from Trials and Tribulations, because I was able to get the Wiley's model decals to give it the proper hull paneling. And I was very intentional with the color. I had the photos of the model taken into storage. My color choice, the color I mixed, was based specifically on how it appeared on my monitor to my eye. And that's as close as I got to accurate. The A-Wing, I just used the photos, the reference photos in the instructions from Bandai.
Yeah, that's a good approach, and it's very similar to mine. I don't think in the last decade I've ever sat down and tried to match an exact color on screen. I've certainly never pulled out a color chip. I've never followed instructions for how to mix the appropriate shade of gray for the old series Enterprise with 4 parts this to 3 parts that to 2 parts this to 1 part that, and put it in the sunlight for a week. Never done anything like that.
Well, in the last video with the battlecruiser, I specifically said when mixing the color, I showed on screen, like, here's the color I got. Here's the colors I used. Like, I got the Tamiya, which is my base, and I added some blue and white until it looked right. I cannot tell you the ratios. I just mixed until it looks right.
I'll make a confession right now to our guests out in TV land. I don't like a lot of the color schemes for next generation models. I don't like the bright teal color for the Klingon ships. I don't like the high contrast panels on a lot of Federation ships, like on the Defiant especially. And so when I build those types of models, I basically amend those schemes and those colors to what pleases me. So for example, for a Klingon ship, I will mute down that teal and make it more of a military green that I feel is more appropriate. Not going to as far as an olive. I've got the 420 scale Defiant that at some point I'm going to build. And when I do, it is not going to have high contrast panels, because I know those high contrast panels were probably painted that way to make it easier to fill them for all the compositing. Because every generation of composite you lose detail. So it was probably made like that for a reason. Because there's no reason in the world anything being assembled would have a panel of dark gunship gray here against a panel of white, against a panel of blue. Other than when we composite it, we're going to lose definition. So that's my little nod to headcanon.
No, that's fair. Actually, it's interesting you mentioned the Klingon ship specifically. The the Vorchit has had 3 different paint schemes. There was, when it was first released, it was that light bluish greenish teal with some red highlights. In Deep Space Nine, they added more red and yellow. The CGI model is green. Yeah,
so there's exactly which Vorcha are we modeling today?
And actually, this is once again at the risk of doing an aside. Klingon this is the limitation of studio models at the time versus CGI, which you can make changes to much faster. Klingon ships should have infinite combinations because in canon, the Klingon Defense Force is made up by ships contributed by individual houses. So every ship should look different from one another. They shouldn't all look the same like Federation ships. And look, when using physical miniatures, I'll grant you that. But when they moved into CGI, there was a missed opportunity to really show all the colors of the rainbow.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Like, for example, I built the 537 Katinga class. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to see what the original series color scheme would look like on the Katinga. So I went with the top half being a dark gunship gray, a little bit of violet in there, not too much violet, and that sort of pale green on the lower half. And I called it the 1080p Katinga, right, or the D1080p. And I liked it. I got a lot of positive feedback for the color choice. Is it canon? No. But I also kind of like when you told me that every Klingon ship theoretically should come from a different house. I said, well, why wouldn't this look like this? And I kind of like how it looks. I kind of like it better than that green look from the motion picture.
I actually, because my most recent video was on the Klingon ships, I actually had someone in my comments ask me which is most accurate. And it's interesting, the 537 Katinga is accurate to the ship as it appeared before they altered it for motion picture. My understanding was they changed effects houses. and the second effects house determined that Katinga needed more detail on screen. So the one that you have that appears inaccurate is actually accurate, just not to what you saw on screen. And once again, just another relative piece to this conversation. What is accuracy?
Well, that's actually a really good point because, not to give away my game, I might be doing a little bit of research on my next video right now, looking at this era of Star Trek. And the whole period of the Phase 2 TV series evolving into the motion picture, there was a lot of changes going on in there. And there's a lot of misinformation floating around in there. And, I mean, obviously the Enterprise was going to be a different beast before it hit the screen. The Katinga was going to look different because it didn't need to be as detailed for TV broadcast as it needed for a 70 millimeter film wide release. Same with the Enterprise model. So when we're talking accuracy, well, which one are we talking about? Because certainly there are shortcuts taken on the 537 refit, the famous smoothie model. There are features on that are different in proportion and size and shape than what you actually saw on screen. And it's the same with the Katinga. These, I believe, were based off of the initial plans because they need lead time in the model companies to prepare the molds, build things up, and get them out. So if you're going to be overly concerned about accuracy of your, at least those two 537 scale models, just keep in mind that you're talking about models that don't even look like the ones that are on screen in the first place.
Yep. You know, it's an interesting example of accurate but not accurate. The Playmates toy of the Enterprise E for First Contact. The toy looks different in a number of places. The Bussards and the deflector dish, which you've also seen a blue deflector dish in promotional images. They changed the deflector dish because the bright blue dish wasn't going to work for that effect sequence when they fight the Borg on the things. That changed. They also changed the Bussards, but Playmates was running off an early. This is what we're going to do, so it doesn't even match. So I think it's not restricted just to models; it's everywhere.
Well, and actually, that's actually a good point. Is that you look at quite often, not just for Star Trek, but for any licensed toy property, you oftentimes see that what gets released is different from what actually ends up on screen because the toy companies or what have you, they're working off early plans. Yeah. Because they need that run-up time. And there's been all kinds of stories, like with Lego, especially with their Lego kits, where they're famous for spoiling elements from upcoming movies because they have to advertise their products at the New York Toy Fair, 6 months before the movie comes out. So there have been many cases, where toy companies were producing craft, figures, whatever, that were completely changed by the time they got to the movie. Okay, yeah. So, and you were talking too about accuracy to the film miniature. How often do you ever see a film miniature that's completely finished, that is stem to stern, soup to nuts? This is a fully completed model. I don't think you really see that a lot.
We'll talk about the 11-foot Enterprise, but it also makes me think of the Enterprise in Star Trek 3. So the refit, I feel, was done on both sides, but there's a whole bunch of extra damage added to the refit in Star Trek 3 that wasn't there in Star Trek 2. And you just got me thinking, I'm wondering if that was there to hide lack of detail.
My understanding, and again, this is pretty apocryphal, is that when the damage was added during the filming of Star Trek 2, right? When ILM filmed the Enterprise, it was it was the version that was used in the motion picture with that beautiful pearlescent paint scheme. Paul Olsen was the artist who painted it on with an airbrush. All right. The ILM team had a hard time photographing it, getting the reflectivity to balance out. And so when they added on the damage, they had difficulty correcting it and whatnot. So they actually end up repainting the whole Enterprise so that the Enterprise you see on screen after Star Trek 3 is not the Enterprise you saw in Star Trek 2 and in the motion picture because they repainted it. And you really see this in Star Trek 4 when they repainted it again. I think they painted it twice with the blue-based scheme.
Yeah, the blue strongback instead of the gray, green, gray, whatnot. But okay, once again, filming miniature reality. It's like you want to make the... So, The first pilot Enterprise was finished on both sides. The 11-foot original series Enterprise, unlit, no lighting in it for first pilot. It was a completely finished model. Then for Where No Man Has Gone Before, they added lights. The only way was to go in from the other side. That's why you only ever see it from the right.
Yeah, and I've seen photographs from the Smithsonian during the refurbishment. How basically the port side of the Enterprise is just basically a mass of wires that go in through the dorsal and through the secondary hull to feed into the ship itself.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what inspired me to light my salad in glass Astoria that way.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I said, so don't talk to me about making your Enterprise accurate if you're not going to make the one side blank and fill it full of wires. It's going to be example after example after example, and there will be people who fight back on it. Like, no, my way's the right way or whatnot. Or it's
so that begs a question then. If you really can't replicate in perfect accuracy a science fiction model for the most part, then which version should you be striving to recreate?
Yeah.
Should it be the filming model? Should it be the way it looked on screen? And knowing there's usually multiple versions of a model made for the most part, which version are you trying to replicate? The hero version for close-ups? The one for wide shots?
My personal feeling is, I don't have any proof, I don't have any actual proof to back this up, but I believe the AMT 1400 is based on the 2-foot model made for next gen. And there's a couple on-screen references, the shape of the shuttle bay, the shape and size of the impulse engine make me feel that way. But it's also likely when they were developing, AMT was developing the model, the 6-foot would have been in heavy production at that point. So it's likely it wasn't available. So that's the thing. How do you make your model? With the Enterprise D, it's like, well, if you want it to be accurate, the 1400 can only be the 6-foot or the 2-foot. Because the 4-foot by Greg Jean has completely different shapes. The CGI model has completely different shapes.
As I recall, too, the 4-foot model's got a lot more surface detail.
The 6-foot D is smooth, like very, very smooth. I do think the lifeboats were raised, which they undid for generations. It's all just painted. It's all just a big smooth model kit, a big smooth model. I mean, that was the original intent. Was like, look how good the technology, like in universe, how good the technology's become. But you lose a sense of scale, and that's why the 4-foot got all that extra surface relief. But yeah, like I said, it's what do you do? Because the 2-foot, let's say for example, if you were replicating the 2-foot, all the lights are on. Because they didn't light the windows on the 2-foot, they used reflective tape for the windows so that when the studio lights hit it. So if you see an Enterprise on screen with all the windows lit up, it's the 2-foot. Also, the marker lights don't blink, and they're really, really bright. Like, ridiculously out of scale bright.
Yeah, I think that's the same issue with Voyager, is they started production on that show with a physical model, quite a large model. But at a certain point in the series, they transitioned to a CG model. And you can tell the difference between the two of them because the physical model of the Voyager didn't have marker lights behind the shuttle bay because there's no room to put them. So when they went to the CG model, they were able to implement those lights there. So that's a tell when you're looking at the CG model. But that then brings up the question again, okay, are we replicating a CG model now? And if it's a CG model, then how do you make it screen accurate?
Because the CG model also appeared differently, because there's some shots where the Voyager flies over and it's missing detail because it just didn't render. But with TV productions, we got to get it out. I can't think of a specific instance on the top of my head, but I know there's shots where it's missing detail.
Well, it's not just TV as well, too. The 2009 Star Trek, the Star Trek film that everyone loves, and there's no controversy at all. Obviously, that ship is 100% CGI. It's not a physical model. And I keep touching my microphone.
Sorry.
But if you watch the film, I mean, I'm not talking about whether or not you like the design, but just from a purely technical perspective, you can tell that there's multiple cooks in the kitchen because the nacelle glow, the Bussard glow, is inconsistent between shots. Right? And that's a hallmark of CG. So which is the correct version? Should it be the more muted one? Should it be the one that's brightly lit? Which is the right one? They're both on screen. They're both canon. And I think...
ultimately, especially with sci-fi. 'Cause like with tanks, you can look to the real thing, which I would assume there's variants of anyway. But I feel like it's a no-win race to the bottom.
Yeah, if you're trying to especially with CG models, you're trying to chase a CG model and make it accurate, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying earlier that when I build my models, I try and find a happy medium. You know, you got column A, which is your hero model filming miniature. You got column B, which is your CGI model. You got column C, which might be a smaller model used to replicate certain parts of it. I just try and blend it all together and get the most satisfying representation. It may not be 100% accurate or right, but you look at it. To me, anyways, when I look at my models, I say, okay, it feels like I've done a good job in capturing the essence of a specific topic. Because my skills are not good enough to make a one-for-one Xerox copy of anything.
Yeah. No. Well, that's just it. The and I said, just kind of like referring to our notion to talk about the Kelvin Prize, even the Mandalorian. Although I feel like Mandalorian's a good example of consistency between various models, because I feel like ILM took much more care because the model that ended up being their studio model, I don't know if you've seen the behind the scenes.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so they have the physical miniature, which was only supposed to exist as a lighting reference for the CG, but then like, well, why don't we just shoot it like we used to? And they got back, I mean, did it start with Mandalorian? Might have started with Mandalorian, where they kind of got back into physical miniatures and motion control and whatnot. The digital model is very faithful to the physical miniature. There's things you can't replicate on the physical miniature, like there's panels that move out of the way for the vertical takeoff and landing and whatnot. Yep. But I feel like this is a case where ILM took a lot of care to get it right between models. Now, how that bears out for being accurate in your model, it's hard to say. The AMT and Revell ones have their own pros and cons. This is a rare case where I'm steering toward the AMT being the better one. The surface detail isn't as crisp as the Revell, but the simple fact that AMT left the engine intakes open, and Revell, you have to either drill them out or get replacement photo etch, is a major miss on their part. I'm like, I don't want to spend all that time drilling.
Yeah, I did. I wasn't aware of that, because as we said in our last episode, that I don't build a lot of Star Trek or Star Wars models. It's been a while.
But yeah, and when you're talking about if you're using screen captures, well, as I said, if it's odds are if it's a new generation ILM model, there's a lot of consistency between physical miniature and digital miniature. I can't say that for anything else. Hey, Plastic Addicts, I hope you enjoyed this segment of the Modelverse. If you did, there's more conversation over on Tim's channel, and I hope you check it out.